Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com or follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_u. Every week, we interview a film professional and discuss their work, and this is made possible by our sponsors, OWC. Go to owcdigital.com for all your filmmaking and computer needs. This week, I'm joined by cinematographer Martin Ruhe, whose work includes Catch-22, The American, The Midnight Sky, and most recently, The Tender Bar, among many other great films. Welcome to the show, Martin.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, Gordon.
Now, as a fan of George Clooney's directing work, I have to ask you about The Midnight Sky. You guys shot on location. So what were some of the difficulties that you experienced in getting the cold look, I guess, for the film?
We shot on a glacier in Iceland, and then it's a huge glacier, and we shot in extreme conditions. So it's a huge challenge to get onto the glacier, to get, there's so much logistics. We had a base camp, which we built. To get to the base camp, they broadened the road up there, and then we put a set piece up. But then we also, you get up there, you get the gear out of containers, you put it into vehicles which can get onto the glacier, and it's a whole huge operation. And we found ourselves in snowstorms quite a few times, shooting with a 7-year-old girl. And in those conditions was really challenging, very challenging for them, because we were all covered up like crazy, and but they were not. Their faces were open to the circumstances, and we had to stop. Sometimes we had to stop because George's eyebrows were so frozen we couldn't see his face anymore. We had to shape that off. It was extremely challenging, yes. We shot a lot of handheld in there. I remember when we asked, because we had a shot where we wanted them to appear out of the snow, coming towards us. So we said, you go that direction, and then we give you a radio, and when we don't see you, you turn around. And if they would turn around the wrong direction, because there's no orientation there, it made our security team very nervous. They would go the wrong direction, we might lose them.
Wow.
So,
now, what's crazy is I know, because as a Canadian, I know a couple people who've shot way, way up north in the snowy tundra. Yeah. And I remember about 20 years ago, talking to one cinematographer, and he always, whenever he shot in the cold, would bring, back then, because we were shooting on film, he'd bring a Bolex.
Yeah.
And the reason is because it was mechanical. There was no digital or anything like that. So did that cause any issues for you guys in terms of, everything being digital now or anything like that?
No, not at all. I remember that when we shot film, sometimes you would, because on the American we shot in northern Sweden, it was really, really cold. But there, I remember at some stage where you would change the fluid or the grease inside the camera when we shot film, because so it doesn't get too stiff. But you had heaters for the cameras, but on this one we didn't have that. We just had a lot of plastic cover around it, and then the snow would go everywhere. I had a light meter in my pockets, and it wasn't perfectly sealed, and I took it out and it was totally frozen and covered with snow. It was really rough out there. Yeah.
Wow. So you were just like, oh, you know what? I'll just gauge it based on my eye.
It's digital. It's not that much. Yeah. And then once you start shooting, you have your basic settings, and then I look around and judge by eye.
Wow. Now you've done a lot of work with George Clooney. Like, how did you guys meet, and how did you sort of build this sort of working relationship?
Yeah, we did. I shot a film with him in it. He was producer and the lead actor on The American, and we shot that like 10 years ago. Oh no, we shot in 2009. But then I hadn't heard from them for a while, and I had done one more commercial with him, and then for years I had heard nothing. But when George and Grant were preparing for Catch-22, a TV show which we shot for Hulu, they asked, like they usually do, they asked their regular guys, and then they were not around, they were not available. So they remembered also that the American ages well and how we worked on that. And then they asked me. And when we talked back then, I was like, yeah, I'm sure they're just fishing around. And because they can, he's always chosen great DPs, and he's always, and I'm sure there's a big line of people who wants to work with him, who want to work with him. And then, but no, they were so certain that they want to do it with me. And then it was not a discussion of, oh, let's see who's available. They were like, no, we want you to do this. And it worked really well on Catch-22. And then we did Midnight Sky, and then we did Tenderbar. And it's great because it's also such a huge range of storytelling, technology. You go from space, Second World War to space, to 70s, 80s, Long Island. It's nice. It's good.
How do you like to get on the same page creatively with a director when you're starting a project?
I like to talk a lot with a director. I like to see, because the director usually has been with a project so much longer than when I arrive. So I like to listen. I like to talk. I like to hear his thoughts, his emotions, what's drawing him in, and how he sees the character. And I don't like to sit down and say, oh, I do a mood board. This is my moods. This is what we're doing. Because I feel like then, I would love to discover that together with the director, production designer, costume people. I would like to take in locations because, the recent stuff we shot was in America, and America of the 70s and 80s. I haven't been there. So I want to take in, and I don't want to come to conclusions by something I've seen already. So I like to listen. I like to try to build a feeling and sensitivity for the material, and then based on that, progress.
Well, it's interesting because you talk about like the 70s and like you weren't there in the States. But one of the things, like when we shot back on film, it'd be like, okay, well, this film stock kind of looks like the older film stocks, or, you would start doing that sort of process. So because we're digital now, like, how do you approach that? Because you can't really choose a film stock. You've got to light it specifically or something like that. How do you approach that?
I still think you have the lighting, you have the glass you pick, and sometimes you pick filters or you work with a LUT. On this film, on Tenderbar, we looked a lot at William Eggleston pictures, and that's a lot of Kodachrome, Ektachrome, and has some nice texture. So I did a little bit of testing. We chose a lot of practical look lighting. I treated the bar interior and the house interior are built on set, but I lit that a lot like you would light a location. So a lot of the light comes through the windows, and then we were checking on the window treatment. We used a lot of curtains, or we aged the glass, and then I didn't want to see too much outside of the outside world. I wanted it to be like a cocoon where he grows up, our hero. And I think you test that. Then I used some filters to make the lenses less contrasty, because lenses back then were not as contrasty and as sharp. Digital sometimes makes things too sharp. But I knew also that George wanted to use zooms a lot, and then we wanted to use them as a reference to 70s films where in a story you zoom in when something happens with somebody. If that's a reaction, we did that quite a bit. And so I used and we had some small locations, so I used compact engineer zooms for that. I use an Alexa Mini, and then I fitted around a little bit with, I asked my color grader,
the DIT.
yeah, no,
Colorist.
The colorist. So we always work with Stefan Sonnenfeld at Company 3, and I told him this is the direction, and he knew, of course, he knew the photographer, and he had done some work, and he was like, oh, I understand, and he sent us a lot. Based on that lot, we did some tests. We modified a little bit with the DIT, and then I used some filtration. I used the lenses. I used atmosphere interior where I could, and then it's the rest is a little bit the color of the lights you use and the practicals you pick.
Interesting. So I guess and this is kind of, I guess, more just like a personal question off the side, but like, I guess, you wouldn't look at the camera and be like, okay, we want an area because it has a particular color hue to it or something like that. You would pretty much go just based on the lighting.
I think so. And then I like Arri cameras because I like what they do with skin tones. I like the naturalness. I did some commercials. I sometimes use red when I was going to places where red was the most popular choice, and then we couldn't bring a camera or something. But it's I find it. I also use Sony Venice on commercials, so I got good results out of every of those cameras, and I feel like if Fincher can shoot something great on red, I'm sure I can do that as well. But I like there's a lot of stuff in the handling of Arri cameras. That's why I keep coming back to them. For my next film, though, I'm going to choose a Sony Venice. So because it's more flexible with the large format and the Super 35 and mixing that. Yeah, it's the best combination for that. I don't use red very much. That I have to say.
Yeah. No, whenever I talk to cinematographers, a lot of them do films and commercials, and they circle back and forth. And you just mentioned making commercials.
Yeah.
What's interesting is a lot of times when I talk to them, they talk about bringing experience from the film set to the commercials. But is there something you learned in commercial filmmaking that you use on film sets all the time?
Well, like the opening shot of Tenderbar, we see a car from behind for a long time, and then we approach the car and we go around and we end up in a close-up of the boy while the car is driving on a country road. I feel confident to do that because I've done so many car commercials, and we use the Russian arm for that, and where you have a remote camera with remote head, stabilized head on a camera car, and then I can do that because I've done that so many times on car commercials or similar stuff. I can tell you what drones can do because I haven't done it so much on feature films, but I've done it on commercials, and then that stuff I take from commercials to films that I have a lot of experience with. I don't know, macro stuff underwater, special slow motion things, high-speed cameras, and all of that. That's something I learn on commercials and I bring to features if needed.
Interesting. Now, I was a fan of the Catch-22 series when it came out.
Oh, thank you. That's great.
Was there a particular scene or moment that was really difficult to shoot or tricky to shoot that you're really proud of the outcome?
For me, there's quite a few where I go like, wow, that was challenging. I love the one where Yossarian is in the plane in episode 6 and the guy is dying in his arms because he told him to go to that place. Yeah. And the way we shot it, we were in the plane, which we had on not on a gimbal, but we had it on bubbles basically. So it was shaking, was moving, and I was in there with my focus puller. We had I had a Alexa Mini Cook primes, and it was so stripped down, and we had everything on a backpack or on a, so that was in, and wired to the camera. I had the camera as small as I could, only with monitor. My focus puller was in the plane. These two actors, George was outside looking in through the window and then telling us how to shoot it. And it was very tight and very intimate and very strong. And I love how they perform, and I love how we captured this intimately. And that's the moment where he decides to be naked for the rest of the film. And I just think that had such an intensity and madness, and the whole madness of war in that scene. Yeah. I loved that moment very much.
It's fascinating that you chose that moment, because when I read the book, that is the moment that is burned into my memory from reading it.
Yeah.
So I was really nervous when I saw it. Like, I was worried that, I'm like, is it going to live up to the book? And it was really well done. But like you said, it's a small, like, if you've ever, people who are watching, if they've ever seen a bomber from World War II, they're a lot smaller than you realize inside. Oh, yeah. So how did you light for something like that?
Again, the plane stuff, we shot exterior planes, we from a helicopter, we did from plane to plane. We used some of the old planes to put our shot over rigs into, because we didn't have the proper plane for aerial. We couldn't afford that. So we used the old planes to do the exterior shots. And then the interior stuff we shot all on stage in Cinecittà, and we had from a museum piece of the body of one plane, and then we had the front part and the back part, and it is very small. But as I mentioned, I built the camera really small. I was handheld in there, and then it's all handheld, me with them in there. So if it's in the nose of the plane, with two people in there, and then my focus puller is nearby and watching everything, and it's all handheld. And then when we're with the pilots, I'm sometimes seated between them and going like that, and then having my camera or holding the camera here if the shot needs it, and then operate from there to there, and all of that. Because we wanted, for that film, we wanted, the bureaucracy and the madness of the military side. We wanted that to be absurd. So there's a lot of static and there's camera tracking and all of that. But when we go to the planes, that we really wanted to be scary, and because that's where people die, where they disappear, and where, that's what makes him so afraid to lose his mind. And that we wanted to have impact, and we wanted to be really close and intimate and strong, and
Well, yeah, like I said, it burned into my memory, and so I was like, wow, it's because I remember just reading about the guts coming out and just that sort of sticking with me. So it was very, very impactful. Now you when I was reading your bio, you do a lot of travel and you love still photography. So what do you find? Do you find inspiration in still photography and travel for your work, or how does that play into your work?
I like to see, I like to look for, good photography, and I'm traveling a lot. You're right, and that's why, that's why I want to take in where I am before I make my conclusion of how things should look and stuff. Because I don't know, the colors on the American, and then a lot of that we found in a lot of those small Italian villages, and I picked up those colors and made them stronger and used them in different ways. But that came from being there and watching, and taking stills and doing that. And the look of Catch, I photographed the wardrobe test, and then took those pictures into Lightroom, and then we sent those stills. Those processed stills, I showed them to George, and he loved that. And then we sent that to Stefan, and he sent us a lot. And that was basically the look of the show. But for Midnight Sky, I found a Russian photographer. She shoots a lot of weird pictures in Iceland, well, in Siberia, and I'd never heard of her before. But I found her while I was looking for stuff for this project. I was like, oh, this is amazing, because she does a lot of long exposure at night, and then the skies look supernatural but weird, and there's a lot of lonely people in lonely places. And I thought, that's interesting. That's something which should be, we should take that on board. We should. And then I showed it to George, and he loved those stills. And no, I'm looking for that. I'm not always looking from, there's films which always influence you. But I try to look also in photography. Yeah.
What is what was her, do you remember her name by any chance?
Evgenia Abugaeva.
Interesting.
Evgenia, and then the surname is Arbugaeva. And she is amazing. I mean, her photography is just stunning and so beautiful and strange, and because you have to go there, you have to be with these people. It's amazing.
Wow. Is there a particular genre or style of filmmaking that you want to shoot but you just haven't had the opportunity yet?
I don't know, maybe a James Bond.
What is it about James Bond that excites you?
Oh, because I was when I was a teenager, when I was 12 or 13, they would play in summers in my hometown. They would play the old Bonds, and that's when I started going to cinemas. And then I tried to sneak in, because they were the age allowance was 16 and I was 13, and tried to get in and watch those. And I just loved it, because it's, he always saved the world, none less than that. And that was some of my early movie thing. And then to see Goldfinger all of a sudden was a mind-blowing thing. Or the You Only Live Twice, when they steal rockets. And I thought there was no limit to it. And, I don't know. Some of them are really silly, but there's a couple of really good ones. I'm not sure. I don't know if that's something I would love to spend a year on or so, but that would be an interesting one. And I'm not sure why they wouldn't ask me yet.
You've got the American version of Bond. You got George Clooney.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now I have one last question that I like to ask everyone I interview. We've been in this pandemic for going on 2 years now. In that time, a lot of people have turned to streaming services for entertainment when they get locked in. Is there a show or movie you discovered over the past year that people should check out?
I discovered recently The Green Knight. I didn't know anything about, because I hadn't seen Ghost Story, for the previous film from these people. I didn't know much about it. I think that's a really beautiful, poetic film. And if you think about nights and stuff, you think of a certain way to shoot things, but they did a really modern version, very much of its own. And I loved how poetic that one is. The Russian film Leviathan, I love that one. That's a few years older, but I saw it recently again, and it was amazing.
Well, thank you so much for letting me interview you today. And that's it for this week, guys. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com, and you can see all our latest videos on YouTube. Search for filmmaker_you. I want to thank you again, Martin, for joining us. And of course, I want to thank our sponsors, OWC. Go to owcdigital.com for all your filmmaking and computer needs. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching.